Imagine this. The power goes out in your neighborhood. Hours turn into days. And while your neighbors are dragging hundreds of dollars worth of spoiled groceries to the curb, you're outside grilling fresh steaks and sipping ice-cold beer like nothing ever happened. Sounds impossible, right? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how that can be your reality. I'm going to break down a complete system that keeps your food frozen solid even during long blackouts. Not for a couple of hours, not for a day or two, but for weeks, even months, without using a single drop of gas or relying on the grid. And the crazy part? It costs about $250 to set up. Before I reveal it, we need to talk about the mistakes most people are making right now that are draining their wallets and putting their families at risk. See, the popular advice floating around online, even from so-called experts, doesn't just fail, it can be downright dangerous. Let's start with the number one disaster, using your car battery to power a fridge. On the surface it sounds clever. Just hook up an inverter and run the fridge for a few hours, right? Wrong. This is one of the fastest ways to destroy the very thing that might save your life, your vehicle. Think about it. In an emergency, your car isn't just transportation, it's your lifeline. You might need it to evacuate, reach a hospital, or find supplies. But when you force your car to act like a power station, you're putting brutal strain on its alternator and electrical system. These parts weren't built for hours of high-output use. It's like forcing a long-distance runner to sprint a marathon. They might push through for a while, but eventually they collapse. I've seen it firsthand: families who trusted this method only to end up with fried alternators, dead batteries, and cars that wouldn't even start when it was time to get to safety. In that moment, the choice is obvious: would you rather have a fridge full of food, or a vehicle that can actually get your family out of danger? Now let's talk about the second trap: generators. On paper it makes sense. Fire up the generator a few hours each day, keep the fridge humming, problem solved. But here's the reality nobody likes to talk about. A typical generator burns about a gallon of gas every 6 to 8 hours. That means just keeping your fridge cold requires at least a gallon of fuel every single day. Do the math: 30 gallons for 1 month. Where are you safely storing that? And what happens when gas stations are shut down or your fuel goes bad after sitting too long? Suddenly your backup plan is a logistical nightmare. And that's not even the worst part. The roar of a generator is like a beacon, broadcasting to everyone within earshot that you have power, fuel, and most likely food, when they don't. In desperate times, that can make you a target. And finally, mistake number 3 is the most dangerous of all: food safety. Every time you cycle your fridge on and off to save power, you're creating invisible but deadly risks. The moment food climbs above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, it enters the danger zone. In that temperature range, bacteria like Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria don't just survive, they multiply at lightning speed. Every 20 minutes, the bacterial count doubles. So that organic chicken you thought was fine, it's not just warming and cooling, it's turning into a petri dish of pathogens that can make your family violently sick at the worst possible time. So if relying on car batteries, noisy generators, or risky on and off cycling isn't the answer, what is? Stick with me, because I'm about to show you the simple, affordable system that actually works, and why hardly anyone is talking about it. And here's the part that could literally put your family in the hospital. The USDA is crystal clear about this: any perishable food that spends more than 2 hours total in the danger zone, above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, should be thrown away. Now imagine what happens when you're cycling your fridge on and off over several days. You're not just adding minutes, you're stacking hours upon hours in that unsafe temperature range. And it gets worse. Your freezer, the one you thought was your safe backup, isn't immune either. Each time the power cuts out, your frozen food begins to thaw from the outside in. When the power returns, yes, it refreezes. But the damage is already done. The constant freeze-thaw cycle rips apart the cellular structure of your food. That means mushy texture, ruined flavor, and the perfect breeding ground for bacteria. After just a few cycles, those ribeye steaks you paid $15 a pound for aren't just ruined, they could actually send your family straight to the emergency room. And good luck finding a hospital bed in the middle of a widespread crisis when the system is already overwhelmed. Now let's get into the brutal math that no one talks about. Running a full-size refrigerator on backup power is practically a losing battle from the start. A typical full-sized fridge uses between 3,000 and 4,000 watt-hours of electricity per day. In battery terms, that's around 400 amp-hours from a 12-volt system. But here's the kicker. A standard deep cycle battery only gives you about 100 amp hours when brand new, and that's in perfect conditions, which almost never exist during emergencies. So to run your fridge for just one day, you'd need at least 4 giant batteries. But factor in inverter losses of 10 to 15%, cold weather cutting battery performance by 20%, and the fact that you can't fully drain a lead-acid battery without killing it, and suddenly you're looking at 6 or 7 batteries just to make it through 24 hours. At $200 to $300 each, that's well over $1,500 for a single day of food storage. And each one weighs 60 to 70 pounds. Congratulations, you now need a forklift for your portable power solution. Even if you try to cheat the system with a generator, the math still looks ugly. You'll have to run it several hours each day to keep your fridge cycling. Generators are loud, around 65 to 75 decibels, like running a vacuum cleaner in your backyard for hours. They burn through fuel you have to store, guard, and eventually replace. And worst of all, the sound of that generator tells everyone around you that you have power, fuel, and food when they don't. In desperate times, that's not just a nuisance, it's a security risk. So here's the truth. Trying to force backup systems to keep a full-size fridge alive is like trying to run your entire house off a couple of AA batteries. It's technically possible, sure, but completely impractical. And this is the point where most people just give up. They throw their hands in the air, resign themselves to eating cold beans out of a can, and accept that refrigeration is impossible during long blackouts. But here's where everything changes. Because that assumption is dead wrong. The real breakthrough, the one hardly anyone talks about, is actually counterintuitive. You don't need to think bigger, you need to think smaller. Instead of wasting energy on a massive power-hungry fridge, you set up a compact chest freezer and a mini fridge specifically for emergencies. Now this isn't about settling or compromising. It's about being smart with your energy budget and finally getting results that actually work in the real world. Let me put this into perspective with real numbers. A 5 cubic foot chest freezer uses only about 218 kilowatt hours of power per year. Break that down, and it's roughly 600 watt hours per day. Add in a 2.6 cubic foot mini fridge at about 350 watt hours daily, and together, you're looking at under 950 watt hours per day. That's less than 1/4 of the energy demand of your full-size fridge. And here's the genius part most people overlook: chest freezers are naturally efficient. Cold air sinks, so when you open the lid, the cold air stays put. Upright fridges lose a blast of cold every time you open the door, forcing the compressor to work harder. A chest freezer, on the other hand, locks the cold inside, keeping your food safer for longer, and stretching your backup power to levels you didn't think were possible. So what does this mean for you? It means you can stop wasting thousands of dollars trying to power something that was never designed for emergencies. And instead, you can build a lean, efficient system that will keep real food cold and safe when it matters most. Now here's where things get exciting. Modern chest freezers and compact mini fridges, especially Energy Star rated models, aren't just efficient, they're ridiculously efficient. Thanks to better insulation and advanced compressors, these little units sip power instead of guzzling it. And because they're smaller inside, they don't waste energy cooling empty air or fighting constant heat transfer through big walls. That means your modest battery bank, the one that would collapse under the weight of a full-size fridge, can suddenly keep your emergency setup running for days instead of just hours. It's like cutting your power demand by 75% with a single smart choice. But here's the genius part: these aren't just in case appliances gathering dust until disaster strikes. They instantly become useful in your daily life. That chest freezer, it lets you buy in bulk and actually save real money. Instead of paying $12 a pound for steaks, you can grab a quarter cow at $4 per pound and stash it away. You can stock up on frozen vegetables, berries for smoothies, ice cream for the kids, or pre-cooked meals for busy weeks. The mini fridge, that becomes your beverage station, keeping drinks cold without forcing your main fridge door open 20 times a day. During holidays, it becomes overflow space. During the week, it's where leftovers live, so they don't get lost in the back of the big fridge until they grow legs. For my family, this one upgrade completely changed how we shop. We save around $180 a month just by snagging bulk meat sales and manager specials on items close to their sell-by date. Without that extra storage, we'd pass on the deals. With it, we freeze them instantly and enjoy the savings. In fact, the system pays for itself in grocery savings even if the power never goes out. And when it does, You're already prepared with a calm step-by-step plan. Here's how it looks in real life. Within the first half hour of a blackout, you transfer your most critical items to the backup units. Medications that need refrigeration go first. Insulin, antibiotics, hormone treatments, things you absolutely cannot replace easily in a crisis. Next come your most expensive proteins, the steaks, salmon, or specialty cuts that would cost a fortune to replace. After that, dairy products like milk and yogurt, especially if they've already been opened. Finally, you move leftovers or meals you've prepped. Instead of panic, you're organized. Instead of gambling with bacteria and temperature swings, your food stays rock solid safe. Meanwhile, your neighbors are rushing to cook everything before it spoils, standing in long lines for overpriced ice, or trying to survive on canned beans. But you? You're sitting comfortably, knowing your food is secure, your meds are safe, and your system is running silently, without the roar of a generator or the stress of draining your car. That peace of mind alone is worth it. And now, here's the best part. It doesn't take some crazy expensive setup to make this work. In fact, you need surprisingly little gear. Just 1100 amp-hour lithium iron phosphate battery, paired with a 600-watt inverter, is enough to power both your chest freezer and mini fridge for roughly 24 hours. Sounds too simple? Let's break it down. That single battery, at 12 volts, gives you about 1,200 watt-hours of stored energy. Your combined appliances only draw about 950 watt-hours per day. That leaves you a comfortable safety margin, even after accounting for inverter losses and the protection systems that keep the battery healthy. And the beauty is, you don't need to mess with complicated wiring. During normal times, your backup freezer and fridge just plug into the wall like everything else. But the moment the power cuts out, you simply unplug them and connect them to your inverter. That's it. You've just switched over to your silent, reliable emergency power system. Here's the part that surprises most people. It's almost laughably easy to set this whole thing up. You don't need to be an electrician, you don't need special tools, and you definitely don't need to tear apart your house wiring. All you're really doing is switching your appliances from one power source to another. Plug the battery into the inverter, plug the inverter into a power strip, and you're done. Honestly, a middle schooler could handle it in 10 minutes. The heart of this system is the battery, and this is where chemistry matters. Forget lead-acid car batteries. The gold standard for emergency setups is lithium iron phosphate, commonly called LiFePO. Why? 3 big reasons. First, they're safe. Unlike other lithium types that can overheat, catch fire, or even explode if damaged, LiFePO-powered batteries are thermally stable. People have drilled straight through them without causing flames, though I wouldn't recommend testing that yourself. Second, they give you way more usable energy. Lead-acid batteries can only be discharged to about 50% before you start killing their lifespan. But LiFePO-powered batteries can safely be taken down to around 10% again and again without harm. That means a 100 amp-hour lithium battery gives you about 90 amp-hours of real usable power, while the same size lead-acid only gives you about 50. You're literally doubling your capacity without doubling your weight. Third, longevity. A high-quality lithium battery can handle 3,000 to 5,000 charge cycles while still holding about 80% of its original capacity. That translates into decades of use if you're only cycling it during occasional outages and monthly tests. Compare that to lead-acid, which limps along for maybe 300 to 500 cycles before you're replacing it every 2 to 3 years. Yes, lithium costs more upfront, but over the long run, it pays for itself many times over. Now let's talk about the inverter. The device that turns your battery's DC power into clean AC power for your appliances. This is one area where you cannot cut corners. You absolutely need a pure sine wave inverter, not a modified one. Here's why refrigerators and freezers use induction motors. If you feed them the dirty, choppy signal from a cheap modified inverter, they'll run hot, inefficiently, and their lifespan will plummet. Pure sine wave inverters, on the other hand, produce electricity identical to what comes from your wall outlet. That means your fridge and freezer run smoothly, efficiently, and safely.